Time extended.
Hello viewers and welcome back to Video Games Forever. I want to start today with a game I never thought we'd see again. True story, my brother-in-law used to have a jet ski. As ridiculous a notion as that may seem in a country where the sea temperature is so cold most of the native fish don't want to be in there. I never got the chance to have a go on it though because he sold it, married my sister and had 3 kids instead. No regrets though, of course. But look, it doesn't matter anymore because 1996 is back with one of the best personal watercraft racing games ever, including perfect pixel sunshine and no need to peel a used sanitary towel from your forehead. The re-release of Aqua Jet via the increasingly ambitious and expansive Arcade Archives collection plays a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to after 3 decades. You have just the 2 courses to race, both of which share large sections, including a jump competition of sorts towards the end of a run. This area records how far you can stay in the air off each of the 3 ramps, giving you another target to hit along with going for the best time overall. Time Trial will test you on a single course, with records there for all to see on the online leaderboards, whereas Time Attack will ask you to complete both courses forwards and then backwards in mirror mode, all back to go for the best overall game completion time, and this is probably where your most competitive challenge lies with friends. The graphics certainly look their age, but you can add numerous different layers of scan lines and assorted other CRT textures for that authentic effect, and the frame rate, and in turn the handling, is buttery smooth. It feels great to power slide around the corners, hugging the apexes as tightly as possible to shave those all-important tenths off. As with most pure arcade games, you'll only need to dig Aqua Jet out every now and again, challenging cocky friends who think they've got your time beat. Even for an arcade game, this is a slight package. I accidentally achieved the Platinum trophy just by playing for an hour across the various modes, so there is that if you're interested. Otherwise, this game is only for those of you wanting to scratch that nostalgia itch when your time is limited and precious, or if you're a resentful alcoholic with 3 ungrateful children.
No! No!
A little while ago I did a video for 5 of the hardest platformers I've ever played. If I were to do another video along those lines now, I'd definitely include Volgarr the Viking 2. This game wants you to know pain. If it was an arcade cabinet from the 90s, it'd summon you over with its enticing pixel art and chunky arcade sound effects, then it'd suck every last coin out of your pocket, probably spit some of them back in your face for being pathetic and insult your mother. But you just can't resist it. Volgarr the Viking 2 takes the original hardcore indie favourite from 2013 and tidies it up to 2020's retro standards. The pixel art and animation are excellent, the controls are nicely predictable, and it has one of the most impressively cinematic soundtracks I've ever heard in a game of this type. The famous difficulty stems from the rapid enemy attacks and some tricksy platforming. There's a lot of trial and error here, with plenty of areas you'd have no hope of tackling without failing several times first, and then several more, and several more. Pattern recognition is everything, and your timing often has to be split-second perfect across levels that are surprisingly long. The game does offer concessions in the form of weapons and armour upgrades that you'll find in chests, with each new piece granting you an extra hit point, along with other boons like extra speed and damage. You also have mid-level checkpoints, you can use the practice mode to master any level you've already beaten, and then there's the undead mode. This is basically invincibility against everything that isn't falling completely out of the level, triggered automatically once you've used 6 consecutive continues, if you haven't turned the feature off before your playthrough, that is. At this point, Volgarr effectively becomes a bright green zombie for the rest of your run, jumping and swiping with impunity, with the only other penalty being the worst of the possible endings in the game. And yet, even as a hulking zombie that laughs off any attack from creatures big and small, you're still not guaranteed success. A combination of the platforming and accidentally bouncing off certain enemies demands careful attention, or there are plenty of scenarios where you will fall to your undeath yet again. I'll be brutally honest, if you're a casual gamer with limited time and patience, I suggest you pass on Volgarr the Viking 2. But if you love your traditional 16-bit platformers in the mould of Ghosts and Goblins, and you're prepared to put in the time and effort, it doesn't get much more arcade than this. For my money, and along with Garou, Mark of the Wolves, The Last Blade 2 is SNK at the height of their pixel powers, and it's a shame that this game has been hidden in the shadows of Fatal Fury and King of Fighters for so long. This game cost me less than £2 in a recent PS Store sale, and for that you're getting one of the most comprehensive old school fighters, brought up to date with a huge suite of player friendly modifiers, ways to play, and clear guidance for every single move in the game. The 12 mostly armed base characters are all entirely distinct, from the diminutive but deadly Okina and his fishing rod to the statuesque Hayo, who has just got out of the bath but will still batter you in his wooden flip-flops. Moves are largely executed with very familiar Street Fighter style commands, with supers you pull off when your EX meter is full, achieved by attacking or being hit as usual. This bonus attack is divided into speed or power categories with very different results, and it's up to you which way you want to go at the character select screen. The Last Blade 2 is easy enough for casual players to pick up, and you can eventually learn to string together some impressive combos without the inputs being too over the top. All the moves look and feel great to pull off, and a lot of the basic special moves, like a 3-foot man launching a tortoise out of his bag, never fail to amuse. The variety in the dynamic backgrounds is excellent, and even on a modern TV, the pixel art is well scaled for clarity, with all the usual scanline and screen options available for tailoring to your preference. If you love an arcade fighter but you're struggling with how hardcore the newer one-on-ones have become these days, get a friend over and give The Last Blade 2 a go. Wild Guns is one of those games you swear you saw in the arcades, but it actually only ever came to the Super Nintendo in the mid-90s. There was apparently meant to have been a 32X version, but seeing as that ill-fated device lasted all of 10 minutes, it never materialised. It's all very simple. On one single screen, with only very limited scrolling to the left and right, you shoot anyone and anything you see move, all the while dodging incoming fire by jumping and diving out of the way. When things get really hectic, you have a certain number of screen-clearing bombs, and you can pick up more of these by shooting the power-ups left behind by dead enemies and breaking open certain objects in the environment, along with new ammo-limited temporary weapons like laser guns and grenade launchers. On top of that, you're always building a meter at the bottom of the screen that eventually triggers a short spell of invincibility and a sudden overpowered minigun style attack, allowing you to shred pretty much anything. It would have been nice to have let the player decide when to trigger this though, rather than it being automatic, which can prove a bit wasteful. Joining the original cast of cow people, Clint and Annie, are Doris, a slow, stout lady who looks like she knows her way around a kebab and uses grenades as her default weapon, and Bullet, the rapid sausage dog who relies on the drone to take down enemies with a lock-on targeting system that reminds me of the smart gun from Aliens. It gives you plenty to experiment with, and mixing up the approaches in local 2-player can work well. Wild Guns Reloaded has a lot of variety across its 8 stages, with each subdivided into very different areas. There are some enjoyable bosses, while the pixel art, animation and controls are excellent throughout. You could argue that a modern take on this game would have worked well as a twin-stick shooter, and things do get very tough, with strictly limited lives even on the easiest difficulty setting. It's always a case of one hit and you're dead. But the game is rarely attritional or unfair, and overall, it's one of the better arcade shooters you can play at home, especially with a friend. Tengai is a wonderfully Japanese shooter, throwing any number of bizarre enemies at you across its beautiful and constantly evolving pixel art levels. Picking from 5 pretty distinct characters, with a 6th available if you input an enjoyably old school cheat code, you can tailor the experience to your mood by selecting a difficulty from the nigh on impossible very hard down through child and into monkey for those who are looking for a more relaxed time, and that's in addition to upping the number of lives you can have and opting for infinite continues if you want them. The mechanics are very familiar. Each character has their own standard fire pattern with a secondary bespoke bomb of sorts that helps you out when things get feisty. The all-important heft as you work your way through the power-ups is very much in evidence, with minions and bosses dropping and breaking apart with some nicely chunky arcade explosions. Considering this game is nearly 30 years old now, the visuals in the version you're looking at, released for the PS4 in 2022, are much sharper than many modern arcade conversions tend to be, especially when viewed on a modern TV, and there are plenty of options to further tailor the experience to your screen. Tengai is a great blast, keeping you on the move through a huge range of superbly detailed pixel art locations. It offers you the tools and the space on screen to use them, ensuring a challenging but entirely fair experience that stands apart from the usual spaceships and aeroplanes based games in the genre. I first covered Armoured Warriors a couple of years ago when I reviewed the excellent Capcom beat-em-up collection, and let me just reiterate that if you're a serious arcade fan who likes their scrolling brawlers, that's still one of the best official packages you can buy today. Alternatively, you can also pick this game up as an individual title via the first Capcom Arcade Stadium, although you'll be looking for it under its Japanese name there, Powered Gear Strategic Variant Armour Equipment. Snappy. If it's not already obvious, the reason I'm coming back to Armoured Warriors again is that it stands up really well today, with a huge variety of options in attack, excellent pixel art graphics and crunching arcade sound effects. There's never really been anything quite like it in scrolling beat-em-ups that I'm aware of. Choosing from 4 distinct mechs, each with their own strengths and weaknesses in speed, power and resilience, you battle across 7 levels, ripping off parts of enemies and bolting them onto your own rig. These can be pieces as diverse as drill bits, flamethrowers, tank tracks and sets of legs that allow you to hover and spin attack. Any part will fit on any mech and it's entirely up to you to choose your favourites. Some levels will work as scrolling shooters and some have strict time limits, and there's a decent variety of enemies. The bosses are also particularly good, with very little of the traditional "I'll batter you until you're penniless" approach in spite of the game's heritage. Things can get a bit hectic on screen at times and it can be difficult to read what's going on, especially with 2 or even 3 players, but that's all part of the fun, and the sheer number of ways that you can attack, with each mech having its own combos, dashes, supers, jumps and more, you can't help but keep coming back to Armoured Warriors and want to keep experimenting. Developed by the guys behind the excellent arcade racer Hydro Thunder Hurricane, Riptide GP Renegade is a thoroughly enjoyable and little known follow-up that will cost you next to nothing these days. Set in the near-ish future, a group of racers battle for control of territory across 9 different areas, each with varying degrees of dystopian decay or outlandish opulence. The track design here is superb, with dynamic and evolving courses that suddenly introduce new jumps, obstacles and shortcuts with each new lap, or across one of the several point-to-point races. It's exactly what an arcade racer should be, fast and getting faster all the time, with outlandish jumps and some excellent waterborne physics that makes every race feel different. The campaign will set you on your way to unlocking new riders, jet skis and courses, and all the machinery can be upgraded to a certain level as you earn money in races, alongside changing up your livery at any time you fancy it. Predictably, there are difficulty spikes, and there's often at least one AI opponent per race that seems able to pip you on the line out of nowhere. Upgrading your machine by revisiting previous races for cash if necessary will get you across the line in first eventually though. It's just a shame that you won't need to swap between your rides. Every new vehicle is just that little bit quicker and nimbler than the last, so there's no real reason to go back to an older one which is no longer competitive. Despite having a huge list of stunts to unlock, freestyle events aren't as good as they could be, with comparatively few ramps and ledges to trick off in the solitary minute you're given for these events. Tricking to gain boost in races does work well though, and the 2 and 4 player split screen multiplayer maintains the rock solid 60 frames per second. Playing with friends across a championship for several races is well worth your time. Then the little touches like boss races and even the police trying to knock you over on some courses are also enjoyably silly touches that add to the arcade charm. Overall, and given its rock bottom price, Riptide GP Renegade is well worth a look for arcade racing fans, and I really hope we see the developer Vector Unit work on larger racing projects for console and PC in the very near future. I'm really not sure what a Zix is, but we got ourselves a super one here, and we've also got one of the better modern arcade shooters I've played in recent years. Starting with a choice of 2 ships with very different fire patterns, which eventually rises to a choice from 6 once you've gone through the game and met certain criteria, Super Zix is on the more manageable side of bullet hell, with a few handy options for the casual gamer. In addition to a standard or challenging difficulty, you can boost your number of lives and credits for a playthrough, and even set the speed of your ship to help you dodge those pink blobs of death. Of course, if you're a seasoned hardcore shmup sadist and you flick the arse of fear with a wet towel, you can go entirely the other way, making the whole game a one-hit kill permadeath affair. I'd love to hear from anyone in the comments who's that good that they can get through the game like this. The pixel art and scaling are excellent here, and those all-important meaty power-ups are a joy to unleash. You'll eventually spit forth an entire wall of death, watching pretty much everything explode instantaneously in front of you, and all accompanied by the kind of chunky sound effects that had you stopping to stand and watch cabinets in the arcades of the 90s. There are initially only 6 relatively short levels in the main game, but there are several more stages to unlock, and even the one true boss if you can somehow get through all of that. If you need some practice, you can select and tackle any individual level you've completed in the main game from the title screen. As a traditional shooter package, it's difficult to know what else Super Zix could have offered. It does a good job in balancing the needs of hardcore and more casual gamers, and it's one I keep returning to for a quick blast, trying out different ships each time. Those 90s arcade fans with tinnitus and quick reflexes need to check this out. There's been a real resurgence in superscaler style races in recent years, with the excellent Horizon Chase and Slipstream to name just 2 of the better examples, but it's about time that somebody got us back on 2 wheels, which just seems to be so rare these days. Retro Highway has you riding one of several different unlockable motorbikes, endless runner style, trying to avoid being pancaked by cars, vans and trucks while pulling off massive jumps and collecting coins to upgrade your ride. This dirt cheap game is hugely addictive and packs much more of a punch than you have any right to expect in its tiny form factor. There's even some decent haptics and adaptive trigger work on the PS5 version, which most AAA developers can't be bothered to use effectively. The different locations offer increasingly dense traffic, crossroads, oil slicks, ice and plenty more hazards besides, and it becomes a genuine thrill to keep the boost button held down while narrowly avoiding death every few seconds, listening to that sweet wonga pouring into the piggy bank. Retro Highway is incredibly simplistic, but it moves quickly, handles well, features plenty of unlockables, and it ladles out the satisfaction when you want that instant arcade hit. We finished today with a genuine hidden gem from arcade masters Capcom and 3 games for the price of 1. That price being 84p in a recent sale, which is about $1 or €1. 3 Wonders is only ever £1.69 or $2 at full price anyway, as one small part of the Capcom Arcade Second Stadium collection. For that princely sum, you're getting 3 colourful and eminently playable arcade games that most people, myself included, probably hadn't heard of until quite recently. Let's start with my favourite game of the 3 on offer. Don't Pull is like a cross between Pac-Man and Bomberman. As either a rabbit or a squirrel, or both, you navigate increasingly complex mazes, hitting blocks to slam them into enemies that will otherwise mercilessly pursue you and try to jump on your face, or incinerate you with their fire breath in the case of the dragons. You can bash through certain blocks to set up attacks or simply dig out an emergency escape route. You can even take to the fringes of the levels, bypassing obstacles altogether but leaving you vulnerable to roaming hazards. Don't Pull is a really enjoyable action puzzler across 32 rounds, and it's great for score attack fiends and speedrunners. The next game is probably the weakest of the bunch, with relatively simplistic shooting and level design, although there are some decent bosses. Chariot Adventure Through the Sky is a classic shmup, which, more than any of the other games in his collection, does become very difficult. Unless you're particularly proficient at these types of games, you'll rely on spamming continues to get through to the end. It doesn't help that a lot of the enemies are quite spongy and will swarm you at regular intervals, leaving you with little choice but to accept your fate and then try to gather your power-ups again before they disappear when you respawn. Still, for such an inexpensive package, there is a novelty value in going through such a rare piece of arcade history. The final game in the package takes the same characters from Chariot and serves up a much more playable and enjoyable game as a run and gunner. Midnight Wanderers reminds me of SNK's almost equally obscure Top Hunter Roddy and Cathy, with multi-tiered levels and tons of characterful enemies. There are a number of upgrades you'll pick up for your weapons, and you're given 2 hit points automatically, with the first time you're struck reducing you to running around in your pants in true Capcom style. There's a nice variety in the level design, and to my considerable surprise, all the bosses are all completely fair, allowing you to employ actual tactics to beat them. Although this clam thing seems to have forgotten that he's a boss at all, and is crap. He's an outlier though. For serious arcade fans, across all 3 games in 3 wonders, and for a price you can't even buy a postage stamp for these days, you're getting the kind of 2-hit combo of nostalgia and gameplay that still holds up today. If you were playing in the late 80s and early 90s, check this out. So, what do you think? Have you played these games? Has anyone actually completed Volgarr? What arcade games do we need to be talking about? Let us know in the comments below, and please leave me a like if that's not too much trouble. You'll be very welcome if you'd like to subscribe as well. I'll be back very soon with a lot more games, new and old. Enjoy your gaming. Cheers for now.